On September 14, 2022, Saleh Hafez broke into a Blom bank branch in the city of Beirut. She had with her a toy gun which she used to hold up the people inside as hostages while she demanded access to her savings account. But why did she resort to such an unconventional method? Why not just go to an ATM? Hafez had previously tried to withdraw her own savings to help fund her sister's cancer treatment, but she was told there was a monthly limit on how much she could withdraw. Left with no choice, she organized a break-in with a group of activists called the Depositors' Outcry, just so she can access her own hard-earned money. But don't worry, her sister eventually got her surgery. This is Lebanon, a small country in the Middle East, home to around 5.5 million people. Currently, it is undergoing a severe financial crisis and an economic disaster. Lebanon has defaulted on its large foreign debts. Its inflation is in triple digits, making the currency utterly worthless. Its people are grappling with grave food and energy insecurity, and the country is suffering from mass depopulation as many see no future in the nation. The population of Lebanon has shrunk at least 15% since 2015, and GDP has more than halved in the past 5 years. On top of this drastic depression is being compounded by the fallout from the Beirut explosion in 2020, COVID-19, and the war in Ukraine. So what happened to Lebanon, once called the Switzerland of the Middle East, to create such a disastrous crash? Up until 2017, Lebanon's economy was actually doing well. The services and tourism sectors were driving growth, and living standards were rising. After the Lebanese Civil War from 1975 to 1990, the government launched a $20 billion Horizon 2000 program in an attempt to reconstruct the country. Economic recovery was aided by a strong financial services sector, international aid, as well as remittances from Lebanese abroad. GDP boomed over 500% from 1990 to 2000. Tourism was booming, and there was a strong confidence in Lebanese banks with its stability, secrecy laws, and high interest rates attracting many deposits of foreign currency. Foreign currency allowed the country to import the capital and necessities needed to reconstruct the country. However, this growth was all funded by copious amounts of government debt. In 2000, GDP to debt ratio stood around 150%. The country was also financing a large current account deficit, causing its foreign currency reserves to gradually deplete. Eventually, debt servicing was costing more than a third of the national budget. In 2020, the GDP to debt ratio had surpassed 170%, and the government defaulted on its debts, making it effectively bankrupt. This meant it could no longer fund public services like healthcare and education. Lebanese households are only guaranteed 2 hours of power from the national grid a day. Thus, large swathes of the country suffer from blackouts. There is also a severe fuel shortage, which not only makes transport difficult, but creates severe cost-push inflation. In 2021, the inflation rate stood at 154.8%. 75% of the population lives below the poverty line. The unemployment rate in 2022 reached 29.6%. The Lebanese pound is also virtually worthless, having lost 90% of its value in the past few years. This means the savings of many Lebanese nationals lost most of their value, severely damaging their purchasing power. Also, the situation was made worse by prolific corruption. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index ranked Lebanon 150th out of 180 countries. In addition, the unscrupulous and shady central bank, Banque du Liban, under the governance of Riyad Salema, was running something akin to a Ponzi scheme in order to attract foreign currency deposits. Salema used what he called financial engineering to draw foreign currency with interest rates up to 12%, while major central banks around the world were offering less than 2%. The governor was also abusing his position for personal gain. Him and his brother were accused of money laundering and embezzling at least $330 million in public funds. He made many illicit deals with commercial banks to gain favor with bankers. As such, Salema told European investigators his personal wealth more than tripled during his 30-year tenure as governor, with his net worth growing from $60 million in 1993 to $200 million in 2023. However, Experts close to the investigation believe these claims are a modest estimate. In 1993, Salema pegged the Lebanese pound at 1,507 Lebanese pounds to the dollar. This exchange rate meant the country was entirely reliant on dollar deposits within its banks. In 2019, over two-thirds of Lebanese bank deposits were invested with the state due to its abnormally high returns. So once the government defaulted and the supply of dollars dried up, the whole system collapsed. Since Lebanese banks invested most their liquidity with the government, most of their assets vanished. The liquidity crisis meant that many savers were denied access to their deposits as banks tried to stop a run on the banks, leading to desperate causes similar to Salih Hafez's. The corruption of Salema is only the tip of the iceberg. Let's go back in time for a moment. To end the civil war, the Taif Agreement was signed between Lebanon's warring factions. This guaranteed political representation to all the 18 religious sects within the country. In hindsight, this arrangement is severely flawed as it split the country along sectarian lines. It also meant government and military positions were not based on merit or competence but rather along religious lines. This allowed Lebanon's elite to flood the civil service and government departments with their own loyalists and moles in order to maintain their own power. As such, the judiciary and regulators in Lebanon are heavily politicized and virtually incapable of establishing a rule of law. Political parties abuse their power for their own gain without any judicial oversight. For example, Hezbollah, a US-designated terrorist group and one of the most influential parties in Lebanon, used its influence in the Ministry of Agriculture to divert ammonium nitrate imports away from farmers to manufacture explosives for their own means. The August 2020 Beirut explosion was also facilitated by government failure. This disaster killed 218 people, caused over $15 billion in property damage, left 300,000 people homeless, and destroyed valuable grain silos. At first, the tragedy was deemed an accident, but a later investigation discovered it was the result of government bickering over the large quantity of ammonium nitrate within the port and a failure to monitor proper safety standards. Thus, many accused the government of criminal negligence, prompting the resignation of the Prime Minister and his cabinet. The PM, Hassan Diab, even admitted the disaster was the result of chronic corruption. Lebanon is also suffering from a refugee crisis. Over 1.5 million Syrians fleeing the civil war sought refuge in Lebanon, and many Palestinians are also residing in the country. This brought a dramatic population shift to a relatively small country. The World Bank in 2013 estimated the costs of these refugees would amount to $2.6 billion. This puts an even greater strain on underfunded and poorly staffed public services. The Syrian civil war also led to multiple Lebanese organizations being targeted by US economic sanctions in retaliation for aiding the Assad regime. This kicked off a series of dominoes whereby confidence in the nation's economy continued to dissipate. The sanctions may also complicate talks between the IMF and Lebanon for the possibility of a bailout, lengthening the economic crisis. Compounding economic woes, the country's political climate is also in a dire position. Dividing the country along religious lines also opens it up to unprecedented foreign intervention, with Saudi Arabia, Iran and France amongst the players keeping an eye on developments in Lebanon. In 2017, Prime Minister Said al-Hariri mysteriously disappeared before reappearing on Saudi state television, where he announced his resignation. Speculation ran wild and many feared Lebanon would be the next battleground in the ongoing proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. This startled many wealthy investors who began moving money away from Lebanon. This event is believed to have led to the unraveling of Lebanon's banking sector as a credit crunch followed, drastically lowering access to credit. Things reached a breaking point when the government proposed a tax on tobacco, petrol, and internet calls via sites like WhatsApp. These triggered the October 17th revolution, which saw widespread protests, strikes, roadblocks, and violence across the country. Hundreds of thousands of protesters clashed amongst themselves and with the police and army. They expressed their grievances not only over the taxes but also the endemic corruption that plagued Lebanon, incompetent economic management, and a highly sectarian government. Many wanted an end to the banking privacy laws, which only benefited the rich by creating vast inequality and corruption. These tense conditions made travel unsafe, and the tourism industry, which had been a major source of income, ceased to exist. COVID-19 put further strain on the Lebanese economy. Many businesses were forced to lay off staff as the country entered lockdown. A lack of medicine and hospital staff also worsened the circumstances. By the time lockdown ended, the currency further depreciated and the price of some staple goods doubled. This made basic necessities almost inaccessible to ordinary Lebanese people. About 1/3 of Lebanese are currently living in extreme poverty on less than $2.15 a day. The only income source for many Lebanese are remittances from family overseas. Remittance payments amounted to 53.8% of Lebanon's GDP in 2021. Nevertheless, this is but a stopgap solution, and politicians have done little to alleviate the situation. The war in Ukraine also forced wheat and fuel costs to rise. In 2020, Lebanon imported 81% of its wheat from Ukraine and 15% from Russia. As such, the war put supply at risk, increasing food insecurity. Fuel is so expensive, many businesses can't afford to continue their operations and go bust. According to the World Food Programme, in 2021, the cost of an average food basket in Lebanon increased 351%. At the moment, it seems Lebanon cannot catch a break. The cause of this crisis is multifaceted, with factors such as corruption and self-serving politicians being the root cause. Despite offers of help from the World Bank and the IMF, the government has been slow to meet the necessary reforms to unlock a bailout by constantly squabbling amongst themselves. This pervasive government negligence means few people see a future for Lebanon. Lebanon serves as a warning to other nations of how corruption and a dereliction of duty can destroy a country. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe for more engaging content. As always, we appreciate your support and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.